Okay, let me make sure I got the record thing going because, oh, there's Adam. What y'all decided to stay out of the classroom today? Trying to hide from me? What, do I smell funny or something? I see how it is. I see how it is. You can't take the glare of my dome anymore in the classroom. That's all right. Well, you wear sunglasses. I don't mind. Okay, so we're going to get started here. I got this thing recording, or at least I did a minute ago, unless it's all changed. With me, you never know. All right, so we can get started today. So before we get going too far, we have to talk about next week. Next week is the last week of the semester. Um, Let me look at the slides here for a minute and see something here. Let me figure out which computer I'm going to do this on. Okay, come on, work with me. It's not difficult. There we go. I just want to take a look at something, and if I is what I think is happening. Yeah, okay, so this is actually the last deck of slides that we have for the semester. But we still have two classes coming up. So I want you to be able to get the points for your attendance, and also for my international students to be able to have those attendance points for your visa and all that stuff. So we're going to have class next week on Monday and on Wednesday. That's the plan right now. But Monday we need to do something maybe a little different, and maybe somebody can send me some emails. But there's something you want to watch. It has to be on YouTube because I don't have any streaming services anymore. I canceled them because I just wasn't watching it. So figured why pay the money? If there's something we want to watch, maybe a movie, we can watch part of a movie. Or we can do one of my favorite things, which may not be yours, and that is to have a philosophical discussion, to just sit around and philosophize. I know it sounds weird, but I actually meet up with people from time to time, and we can sit for several hours and just philosophize. Um, Talk about how straightness isn't straight when you're talking about a wall on a building, that a straight wall in a building is actually not straight, and how that pertains to humanity. I know it sounds weird, but these are thought experiments that we can do as individuals in philosophy that help us understand ourselves and the world around us better, and this thing called reality. So just think about it. If anybody has any suggestions, go ahead and send me some emails. If not, I'll see what I come up with over the weekend. But we will have class in on campus here in the classroom on Monday. And Wednesday, I might, well, it depends what you guys think about this next thing. And I wish there were more students here in the class to be able to make this decision, but I don't think I gave an extra credit assignment this term in this class. Did I? Did I give an extra credit assignment? Anybody remember?
I don't think so, sir.
Okay, I have a message that just came in. Let me pull it up and see what it says. Okay, thank you, Simba and Adam. All right, well, would you guys be interested in an extra credit assignment worth like 20 points? It'll be about a two-page paper with two sources. Is that something that would interest anyone in this class? I have a yes, an emphatic yes. Well, that's all I need. One student, it's good enough for me. So what I'll do is I'll post it on the announcement page, but what it's going to be is going to be a two-page paper with cover page, reference page, two sources from the library, or I should say one source from the library, and then one source from, um, it could be a website or something like that, but it has to be credible. You can use more sources if you want to. It's going to be on the Nauru people from the Nauru Island. It's spelled Nauru. Nauru. Yeah, no, that's how you spell it. And it's a fascinating story about what happened to their island. They once had a very robust um, island with lots of natural resources. It was beautiful. It's the smallest country on the globe. It's in the South Pacific. But it was found that they had this one resource in particular that the world powers really wanted. I think it was a phosphate. I think that's what it was. And it's something like this, something to do with fertilizer. So they come in first. I want to say it was England, and then maybe Germany, and then Australia, and they just did all this crazy mining. And if you look at pictures of Nauru now, it is atrocious the way it looks. They took this tropical, beautiful paradise and literally destroyed it. So now the Nauru people can only live on a ribbon of land that's right next to the beach, so right next to the water. The rest of the island is decimated. Um, so there were organizational decisions that were made that were very unethical in the past, and it led to this happening. Once the Nauru people got control of their island back, for the most part, they had to do something to try to have an economy. So they went into shady forms of banking, so offshore banking. And that brought them lots of money for a while, but then that too fizzled out. And there were problems with that because it was unethical. So now the Nauru people are very unhealthy in many ways because the island is decimated. The atmosphere there, the air isn't really that good for people to be around. That's why they live in the small ribbon area around the water, right next to the water. Um, and it's they're really worried because as the sea levels keep increasing, because global warming is a scientific fact, it is real, they are losing their island, the little bit of their island that they can actually live on. And so take what you've learned this semester about ethics and philosophy from the standpoint of business ethics and apply it to seeing if you can identify maybe how they could have either avoided that issue. Of course, if you're taken over by major powers, you're not going to be able to avoid much of anything, or what they could do in the future to try to move forward in a positive way, ethically speaking, for the best interest of the people of that small island nation. So it'll be worth 20 points. It will be due, I will make it due next Wednesday by 11:59. Okay, so a week from this coming Wednesday. So you have um, about a week and a half to do it. So that is it. I'll put this into the announcements later. Right now, let's get going into our notes for the day. Okay, so the future of business ethics and philosophy. As we come to the close of our term, our semester together, I want you to take just a few minutes and kind of be a futurist. Look into the future, gaze into the crystal ball of the future, and consider what the future of business ethics and philosophy might be. We began our semester together discussing ancient philosophers and their views on ethics. And really, those have served as a foundation for what we've built through this term. Byers and Stanbury in your textbook mentioned that ethics consists of the standards of behavior to which we hold ourselves in our personal and professional lives. And philosophy is the study of wisdom. Technically, philosophy comes from the Greek words philo and sophe. Philo means love or lover, and sophe means wisdom. So it's a lover of wisdom. Understanding how your ethical standards impact how you lead others and function in business is indeed a true form of wisdom. So we're going to do a little bit of a review and talk about the stakeholders. We're going to go over some things that we learned this semester or reinforced. Stakeholders, these are the clients, customers, suppliers, investors, retailers, employees, the media, the government, members of the surrounding community, competitors, and even the environment, according to your textbook. And I think that's a pretty filled out list there. Stakeholders include anyone associated with the organization and even include the family members of the staff and customers. And I like to include the family members because sometimes they're easily forgotten. If you work for this company and I make decisions that impact your life because it affects your employment, whether it be pay, your workload, your stress level, there is a trickle down effect that now impacts your family. And so I need to see your family members as stakeholders also in my decision making. And this is one area where trickle down works. In the economy, trickle down economics does not work. It never has, never will. But here we do see a trickle down effect. They often place great value on the organization's ethical practices. So stakeholders can oftentimes, depending on if they are back to the primacy, if they are a shareholder primacy or a customer primacy sort of mentality, the stakeholders often value ethical practices. Well, you use Patagonia as an example, but there are others, and there's Costco, and I want to say I think it's Petco, are renowned. I'm pretty sure it's Petco. Anyway, they're renowned for how they treat their employees. Well, that is excellent because now you, as an employee of this company, go home and you don't have all the extra baggage that you don't need to be carrying with you anyway. And so I think that's really smart that organizations realize, hey, maybe my stakeholders want us to place emphasis on being ethical. Integrity is an essential aspect of organizational leadership and develops trustworthiness that is necessary in the modern business climate. When I teach organizational behavior, I go through the leadership styles. And one thing that really comes out is you need to have integrity because integrity really, truly is the bedrock of what makes something trustworthy. It builds your reputation. And once you attain a reputation, it helps you retain it. The textbook uses ethics and morals as synonyms. And like we discussed early on, while this is partially true, and in our class we've kept it that way to be consistent with the textbook, it really depends on the context because they can mean slightly different things. While there is a link between religious practice and the nature or our morals, let me try that again. While there is a link between the religious practice and the nature or morals that we have, we are more concerned about the business aspect here. This is a business college, so we're really focused on how does philosophy apply to business ethics. However, your worldview and belief system will have a direct impact on how you view and apply business ethics. Now, I'm not in a place ever to tell somebody what they should believe. Your worldview is yours. Always hold on to it. It is priceless for you. It helps you to be able to decipher and decode reality. You need it. In my case, my worldview changed as I got older, primarily when I graduated seminary. Because when I was going through seminary, I had been a pastor. I had been a pastor for about 10 years. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I was a Baptist pastor for about a decade. And I went through seminary, and in seminary, they give you the information. It's not always guised under doctrine. It is not telling you how to interpret it. They just give you information, whether it's history, archaeology, philosophy, whatever, science, whatever it is, they give you the information. And when I got this, I began to realize I couldn't stand up and preach anymore because I didn't believe what I once did believe. And so I went through a time period where I existentially really changed at the core of my being. Now, who I am ethically remained the same, but my morality, even though I still have morality, it's not guided by a belief system anymore. And so I had to redefine my worldview because of that. And that was me. I don't expect anyone else to go through what I went through. As a matter of fact, the way I am is I will encourage somebody to live out fully their worldview, not as I think it should be lived out, but as they think they need it lived out. And so I think that's important in business leadership that we don't expect people to believe us or believe like we do. They had to share the same beliefs, but to allow for this difference of belief, this difference of perspective, and to come together. We are different, but we are all one team. And we can all work and function together as a unit, even with every single one of us having a different worldview. And I say that because even if the organization is made up of people all from a particular sect of Islam or a particular sect of Christianity or of any belief system, Each individual is going to have their own perspective that's going to alter or change that worldview slightly and individualize it. So everybody truly does have their own worldview. Nobody has the identical same worldview as someone else. It may be extremely similar. You may go to the same church or mosque or synagogue, but you're sitting there as an individual. You have your own perception. And it's important that business leaders remember this, that it's okay for these differences to exist. As a leader, I can use these different perspectives in how I make my decisions. It helps me to identify more of these variables and factors that are affecting this moment in time. I've said this several times already this semester, but it's so true. You from another generation, from another culture, from another part of the world, with another native language, with another way that you were raised, with another religious viewpoint. You bring perspectives to the table that I can't see. And as a leader, I need those to make my decisions. And so some business leaders, they stick themselves into an echo chamber. An echo chamber, it is a cognitive bias and it is a logical fallacy, but it limits down the people that give you perspectives and feedback only to people that will say the things you're already thinking. So you're basically talking to yourself. My own mother has lived in an echo chamber and she surrounds herself with like-minded people. I'm not like-minded when it comes to her views. And so we're at odds on quite a few things, and we had to agree to disagree. And there still is tension there, but that's okay. I'm okay with it. She may not be, but I am. In the workplace, these different perspectives, they help in making decisions. And I've got Zoom just, it gives me this option to have a window open, but then it just does it. It's always in the way. Okay, so now let's talk about the ends. Your textbook, they first considered the result of a decision. In utilitarianism, the best decision, meaning the most ethical, must provide the greatest good for the majority of the people. Unfortunately, this approach does not always take into consideration whether the process used to achieve that result is itself ethical. Only the end result matters. So in utilitarianism, we say something is moral if the outcome is moral. But the way to get to the outcome may be unethical and immoral, but we don't see that because we're focused only on the goal itself, the actual outcome we're headed towards. And this causes some problems because we want the outcome to be ethical. We want the outcome to be moral, but we also need for the process to be ethical. We need that process to be just and right and trustworthy. So now we look at the other side, the means. So the textbook now looks at this part of the theory, these theories. So what is the most ethical way to attain your desired result? Here you look at the goal. What is the best way to actually achieve this that's most ethical? We must consider whether the action we're taking is ethical or not. Byers and Stanberry mention deontology, which is a philosophical view that places priority on how something is accomplished. So it's process driven. Immanuel Kant is the primary philosopher in this particular school of thought. I think we need to blend the two together. We need to make sure that the means, the action is ethical, and we need to make sure that the desired end, the goal, the outcome is ethical. So now, lastly, the authors discuss the character and how it is focused on in the decision-making process. This is virtue theory and is influenced by the social conditioning from our formative years, our childhood. When we're between the ages of I'm going to put it between like 3 and 7, but I think it extends out a little bit more than that. We actually form the core essence of what we're going to be like ethically later in life. This is really developed by our family, our close family, extended family, if you're close to them, and any close family friends. There's a huge impact at this age. The brain is forming and shaping. I don't know if you know this or not, but the human brain doesn't fully stop developing until around the age 25. Women, your brains tend to mature sooner than the male of the species. And so that's why a woman can be at 22 and be very mature in her perspective, her outlook, the way she approaches things. And a male her own age or even a couple years older is still very immature. Now, you may be very mature before that time, but your brain still hasn't fully developed. And primarily, it's the prefrontal cortex that really still is developing. And that is the area that's going to really, that's where we do our critical thinking. That's logic and reason lives there. Okay. Remember, it's the amygdala that controls the fear. That's the fear center. And so there are studies out there that say that people who have a larger amygdala tend to, one, they're worried about themselves more. They are worried about self-preservation. They are worried about immigration issues. They're worried about all these issues that would somehow affect their ability, where somebody with a more developed prefrontal cortex actually applies more empathy, because empathy is also found in the prefrontal cortex, and they look at things more critically and more logically. Now, we both have, everybody has a prefrontal cortex and an amygdala. So, well, from what I see in my life, I haven't looked at the MRI scans lately. I do get them quite often because of my neurologic condition, but I think I got a pretty good prefrontal cortex because I do use logic. I do use reason. But there still are things that make me fear about my own safety or my own well-being because I too have an amygdala. So everybody out there that have the prefrontal cortex and is more developed, they still have that fear center. It's still there. It just may not be as pronounced. Whereas somebody with a more developed amygdala, they may express more concern, more fear, more self-motivated views in their decision-making process, but they still have a prefrontal cortex, and they can learn to develop that further to be able to balance it out. Because the brain is very plastic, and that doesn't mean it's like a cheap plastic thing we buy. No, it's able to be molded, like plastic explosives or something. You mold it like Play-Doh. We can mold the brain. So we do that through learning, through training, through talking to people, through experiencing things. The more we experience, the more we're able to develop our prefrontal cortex. And so I think it's very important to point out that just because somebody might be right now very self-motivated, and because of that fear center, the amygdala, they can learn over time to balance it out by developing the prefrontal cortex. And going back to the notes here, so the virtue theory, this is directly related to our personality and who we are in the very core of our being. That's why it's so essential. And I always promote people to do a self-analysis, not just once. I recommend if you use the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, do it every few years. But always remember that it's one of those things that it tells you an idea of where you are now based on how honest you are when you answer the questions, because it's very based on subjective information. So if you're not being honest, it's not going to really give you really good feedback. If you're being honest and you take it right now and you're like, oh, I'm an ENTJ, and you wait a year, you take it again, and suddenly you're an INTJ, have you changed? Well, maybe some. That's okay. But maybe you're just focused on other things later on than you were originally. So it's always good as a leader or just as anybody to do regular self-assessment. You could write a journal and put journal entries in there and kind of keep track of your thoughts. I do various philosophical exercises at times to do this very thing of who am I now? I know who I was. Who am I now? Then I say, if I've got things inside me that I don't like about my personality, I have two options. I can either change them, or if I'm willing to live with the consequences, I accept them and I'll leave them there. But I have to be willing to accept the consequences. Okay, so this being grounded to our personality, the virtue theory being grounded to our personality, this is grounded in classical Greek philosophy and the cardinal virtues. And these include courage, self-control, justice, and wisdom, according to your textbook. Socrates or Socrates is normally seen as the founder of this particular approach. But however, as we look deeply into our crystal ball, what will ethics be like tomorrow? Will we return to an earlier 20th century form of ethics? And I'm talking about socially, as a society, in business. Or are we going to have one that's primarily based on selfishness and greed and dominance and control? Or are we going to continue embracing the other centric nature that DEI and CSR bring with them? And there's a typo there, and maybe I'll try to remember to fix it. Maybe not before I post them. We'll see. Um, these are questions we have to ask. And if you notice something, things like CSR and DEI, they might be in vogue when a particular party is in office, and suddenly on the chopping block when the other party is in office. A lot of this comes down to that self-preservation that we find coming from the amygdala. If there are things going on in the world around us, it can be frightening, it can be scary, but it can also be a great opportunity for us to embrace that uncertainty for something wonderful to emerge. But it's very scary. And when we feel that scariness of the uncertainty, humans typically hold on to something from the past, an old way of dealing with things. And so we do see a trend that when people feel fearful of immigration or of other things or of a multiplicity, a globalized workplace, they hold on to old and antiquated ideologies. Well, that's problematic. They can fix that through developing the prefrontal cortex, but it's problematic. Ultimately, I think we need to err on the side of what's good for the environment, what's good for humanity. How do I treat the other people involved in this organization and in my society? And am I condemning them or am I trying to do things that benefit them? That's my view. And I hope that in the future, we see business ethics really gravitate more to that. They had been gravitating to that, but they've taken a little hiatus from it and they've gone the other direction in some ways. Yet we still see the head of the NFL. He came out, I guess, about a year and a half ago, and he said DEI is still going to be used and practiced in the NFL because it's the right thing to do. And every major world religion I have been able to find in their scriptures, in their texts, have at the one foundational place or another that we need to treat other people the way we ourselves want to be treated. That is the essence of DEI. I was explaining this to somebody who thought that DEI was full of quotas and just helping people get ahead that don't deserve it. I'm like, no, that's not what it's about. It's about making sure that the qualified candidates are able to be interviewed and we honestly consider them regardless of their religion, their gender, their sexual preference, their ethnicity, their ability level, any of those things. We're not discriminating. We say, okay, you're qualified to be a neurosurgeon. Great, I have your resume. We actually look through the resumes regardless of anything that normally people get discriminated for. That's the essence of DEI. That really is what it's about. Okay, now tomorrow and phronesis. Byers and Stanbury, they mentioned that phronesis is a type of practical wisdom that enables us to act virtuously. The Oxford Review in 2025 pointed out that this type of wisdom is gained through learning new things and reviewing the associated proof. That's critical thinking skills, folks. You get the information, you think about it in a way that uses all these tools you've been getting through all your education, all your life experience. So in school, out of school, and now you look at this and you look at it kind of like a scientist. You evaluate the data. You have not made a conclusion yet, so you're not being biased. You evaluate the data, let the data speak for itself, and then you say, this is what I think this all means. The authors further noted that the concept of phronesis is attributed to the Greek philosopher Aristotle. The Oxford Review went even further and pointed out that phronesis can lead individuals to creative thinking and the ability to make sound judgments. We need creative thinking if we want to have innovation. Now, global changes in virtue. Can business leaders continue to act virtuously even as society around them changes? Not in the same way that we've come to understand virtue. I believe that the pressures impacting business decisions will color our understanding of virtue in business. So it goes back again, partially to primacy. If we're putting primacy onto shareholder profits, their dividends, if we're only looking at the profit of the company, we are more apt to make unethical choices when it comes to the environment and other people. But if we balance ourselves out between the ends and the means, thinking about them both in an ethical way, I think that business leaders can think and move and make decisions in an ethical way. So a choice has to be made. As we stand at the precipice of tomorrow, we find ourselves with two opposing directions to take, such a juxtaposition. This is known as a bifurcation. Okay, now I'm going to explain to you what a bifurcation is, and you're going to get a little bit of understanding when it comes to systems theory. We're not going to go deep into it. It is a wonderful tool that I like to use when evaluating reality. So the following slide here is going to depict a bifurcation graph. That's a bifurcation graph. So you see that line at the left of the screen. It's a single line. It's going along. We're in a business. We decided to open up a business. We're going along. We're on that single line. We're stable. We have not hit chaos yet. When you see the line split into two, right at the point where it splits, there is a bifurcation. Bifurcation means it goes in the two directions. To cause that, a chaotic event happens that causes uncertainty to whelm up. At this point, people either choose the status quo, which is the old way of doing things, or they allow for that uncertainty to remain. And I found that creativity can come out of that chaos, that uncertainty. And what follows that? An emergence of an innovative idea, concept, policy, decision, something like that. Now we got two possible paths. One is good, one is bad. Okay. Now, there's obviously going to be more than just two general paths, but that's why I separate it down into two general directions. We might have 100 good and 100 bad options with each of those, but we got a positive way we can go and we got a negative way we can go. So let's say we take the positive way. Well, you see another smooth line and suddenly it bifurcates again. That's because change and chaos are inevitable. Now you're going to learn the ratio of the distance between these points of bifurcation falls under a universal constant. So whether it's a far, far distant pulsar emitting pulses of electromagnetic radiation, so I'm not a cosmologist, whether it's one of those or your faucet dripping in the kitchen or problems in the workplace, decisions in your personal life, issues while driving, it always falls down into the same ratio. And we'll go over that ratio in just a minute, but that means that I, as a academic, can tell you your organization is really headed for a point of chaos. I can't tell you exactly when it's going to happen, but what I do is I look at the points of chaos before and I map them out. And I see each one is happening more and more quickly. And so what we have is, boom, that long between the beginning and then the chaos. And then it comes down to that long, and then that long, and that long. That's why this graph looks like it does, because where it's all that dark gray, that is the same thing you're looking at with that one single line and bifurcating into two, except happening exponentially. So when this happens, boom, it looks like a mess, but it really isn't. This is just us as human beings going through reality, making decisions. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. And they lead to other things, consequences, outcomes, etc. So the line you see plotted to the right of the graph is stable, but it comes to a point of uncertainty or chaos. When this happens, there are two possible paths. Yet, even these lines are only temporarily stable. They too hit uncertainty or chaos. While we cannot empirically predict with certainty these moments of uncertainty, the times of chaos, we can predict the ratio of the stable parts of the line. So from chaotic event to chaotic event, the stability, we can predict the ratio of that. And they always fall under what's called the Feigenbaum constant. And it happens to be 4.6692016909, and it keeps on going. It's a forever number. Whether it is a distant pulsar, I already said that to you, but you get the point. Everything in the universe and in business, in our psychology, in our sociology, in our society, in world religions, in world wars, in regional skirmishes, in trade deals, we can boil it down to this uncertainty always following the Feigenbaum constant. I know because when I was working on my doctorate, I took a course in this and I experimented and played around with it, and it is fantastic how this works. It is mind-bogglingly accurate, but we can't tell you, boom, on Tuesday, you're going to have a problem. No, we can say you're due for a problem, which is good because now leaders can prepare for it. That is why I can confidently say that business ethics and philosophy stand at the beginning of two divergent paths. We have stood here many times since humanity first began civilizations. The first human civilization that we have on record was ancient Sumer. And so that was a gazillion years ago. And that was the first organized civilization. They conducted business. They had money. They kept records. They wrote it down in something called cuneiform. So we actually have learned how to read cuneiform, and we can read their tablets and look at their sales and their receipts and their accounting. The choices we as a species have made have impacted all future events up to this point. So at any point in the past, the choices that were made by the people alive then actually literally, directly, and indirectly affected us today. So the decisions we make today are going to impact not only us in the future, but future generations. With somewhere over 8 billion people, I don't know what the exact number is right now, but it was 8.2 billion of people calling Earth their home, each person will make a series of choices throughout their life, a number of tons of choices. These choices will begin to coalesce into a predominant decision for all humanity. So it's literally percolating decisions. We make decisions and we make them in a certain way that's kind of in line with the social ethos of that moment in time. There are some differences. Some are more conservative, some are more progressive, etc. But generally, they're within an area of similarity of some type. And these are going to have an impact on the future. The more and more decisions we make, and the more and more we begin to think and act alike as a species, the greater the impact is going to be. So when the civilization of Sumer first was founded and first got going, the decisions they made impacted the future. But as they coalesced as a society, they made decisions that were more in concert with one another, and that had an even greater impact on the future. So then one day in the future, using the ratio that we found using the Feigenbaum constant, we will enter into a new chaotic stage, thus entering the process all over again. So if we stabilize out as a society, right now we're not in a stable place. But once we do, okay, we're going to hit another point of chaos again. Now we got to look at this. It's not one line of all of society. It's society pertaining to this point or that point. We got to look at each data point individually when we look at it using this bifurcation approach. Okay. So we can look at it in business. How is legislation impacting business? Shareholder primacy. How many businesses are involved in focusing their decisions on the profit solely that they can make? How many businesses are focusing on CSR, DEI, the environment, treating people ethically? We can look at that, and we can look at each of these lines, and we do see the series of bifurcations throughout history, throughout time, leading to now. We will be here again. After we stabilize, we'll go through a time period, and we will be right back here again. Not the same exact thing. Hopefully, we have progressed, and as a society, as a species, we've become better but we're still going to hit another roadblock, another series of problems. And that's just humanity. Humanity is always going from one problem to another and trying to get better. So, but why? Why did I spend the last portion of our this isn't the final Monday, this is our Wednesday today, discussing this topic? Because I want each of you to see just how important you are to the future. You and your decisions are important to the future. So important. Even if you never become a multi-billionaire or the CEO of a huge company. I mean, look at me. I have my PhD. I teach. I'm an adjunct professor. I'm not an associate professor. I'm not a full professor. I'm really a nobody. But even I matter. Okay? I'm important to this whole thing as well. Everyone is important. Every decision you or I that we make as business leaders, or even as just human beings, will have repercussions that will reverberate through the remainder of human existence in some way or another. Now, history may not look back and say, Dr. G decided this on this day, and that's why we have this either positive or negative thing. But as my decisions begin to mirror those more of the majority of society, us as a society coalescing our decisions together will have a great impact. So it's society that has the impact, but each person and their perspective and decisions make up society. Therefore, we are all important. So, how do you define virtue? And these are things I want you to sit and think about later. What virtues do you possess? Do you draw your ethos, your ethics, from a single source, like we discussed earlier in this course, or do you flip-flop between sources? Some people have one source for their ethics. Maybe it's religion. Maybe it's family. Other people, they kind of flip-flop. For me, ethics are kind of weird. I have sources for my ethics, but I allow each situation to kind of offer me the data that allows me to decide how ethics should go. But I've got lines, some guardrails up that are, non-starters. If someone's going to be hurt in the process, then I want to avoid that. I want to avoid hurting people. So I try to make decisions that stay in a way that's going to be most positive for most people. Okay, now continuing talking about you, things that you'll be asking yourself later on is what leadership style are you drawn to? Servant leadership, narcissistic leadership, authoritarian leadership, diplomatic leadership, toxic leadership. These are leadership styles that are actually studied by people like me, researchers like me, social scientists. We look into these, and there's a lot of these leadership styles. These are just a few, but what do you see yourself being like as a leader? There's transformational, which really is great. Now you can blend them. I tend to blend servant transformational together. Sometimes I need to have an authoritarian approach, sometimes a diplomatic approach. I can blend them. You can blend them. You can learn to blend leadership styles together to match the ethics that you have near and dear to your heart. Stakeholders, how will you treat internal and external stakeholders? So employees, customers, investors, vendors, etc. Or will you listen to their claims, or are you going to dismiss them in favor of your own ideas? Are you going to be biased against ideas that don't come from you? Or are you going to be open to ideas that come from literally all over the place? Are you willing to look and use critical analysis and critique them and determine in a way, use logic and reason which is really the best approach? Maybe mine isn't the best. I'm open to if Simba or Ryan or Adam or anyone else in this class, Jeremy, that your idea is better than mine. I'm open to that. It's not my way or the highway. I'm limited to what I can see. The future belongs to you and your generation. What kind of future will you leave as a legacy for the next generation? Will you care about and for the environment? How about the needs of others less fortunate than yourself? Or are you going to pursue your selfish ambitions while mandating others follow your plan? What I hope happens is that whatever the future for you looks like, it involves treating other people with respect and dignity. I hope that it is also one that is willing to use natural resources, but in a thought through and planned way for sustainability so we don't lose the natural resources or abuse them. So this course has not just been another set of credits for you that leads to graduation. In fact, this course has been a pivotal stop along your journey as a leader. The concepts you learned and the ideas you worked with this semester have been carefully selected to afford you the best opportunity to become the best you possible. Now the ball's in your court. This course has not been designed to indoctrinate you into a particular ideology. Nope. Rather, you've been taught a few principles, provided a couple tools, and you're set free now to grow. I'm excited about the future that you, as your generation, that what the future that you make, what it's going to look like. I'll be around for part of it, and I'm excited. I want to see your generation having more of a voice at the table. Remember that one day your future will be someone else's past. You see, when I was your age, 2026 was way off in the future. That was my future. It's your present. So your future one day will be all the way out, let's say just 2050. We'll just put it there. Well, what about in 2070? In the year 2070, the future you planned and worked for that came around in 2050 will be someone's past. What kind of starting point do you want them to have? We want them to do better than us. Each generation should do better than the ones before it. It should be progressive and iterative, moving upward to a better place as a society and a culture and a species. Sometimes we see a generation steps up and the next generation steps down. And then the next generation that comes along, they have to either decide, are we going to continue going down or are we going to go up? So always strive to make this world a better place than what you found it. So then, make it the best possible past they in the future could ever hope for. You and your generation have that control. My generation had that ability. In some ways, I like to think we succeeded. In other ways, I know we failed. What kind of leader will you be? And that is the end of this particular lecture. Are there any questions today or comments? All right. Well, I see a message popped up. Let me get the right computer here and the right mouse and okay. Well, if you do have any questions or you want to talk more about this, shoot me an email. And I will be posting the slides in the video to Canvas this evening. I also, over the next couple days, will let you know about Monday what we're going to be doing. And I'll be posting later today also about the extra credit opportunity. Okay. So there we've got it. And without any further ado, you have a great rest of your day. Keep up with your work in Canvas, and I'll see you on Zoom. In class on Monday. That's why no one's in the classroom today. Today's Wednesday. That's twice I've done that this semester. I feel so dumb. I was like, why is nobody here? I thought it was Monday. I've been living on the wrong day of the week. I tell you, I feel goofy right now. I feel silly. Anyway, now that I just made myself look like a moron, no big deal. You have a great rest of your Wednesday, and I'll see you Monday in class And take care.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
You have a good day, Howie.